Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. This is Stephen from Smartling. We're going to be talking to you about the importance of multilingual email marketing and localization. So we're joined by some experts here and some partners of ours from Dispatch. Just a quick introduction. So I'm the Director of Product Integrations at Smartling. I've been here about 3 years. And I'm joined by Ashley and Dylan from the Dispatch team. You guys want to take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yeah, Ashley, you first.
Hi, I'm Ashley, the Senior Product Designer at Dispatch. I worked with Dylan and an engineer to build a direct Smartling integration. So excited to show you all that later in the chat here. Dylan?
Yeah, hi folks. I'm Dylan. I'm the Director of CS at Dispatch. I've been in the email space for almost 8 years now. Helped a lot of customers onboard and start localizing their emails.
Nice. Thanks, guys. So we're excited to show you guys a new solution that Dispatch has built, a new integration between their platform and our platform. Let's do a quick intro to our companies real fast. So if you're just learning about Smartling, we are a translation technology company, and we also are a translation services provider. So we ultimately provide a full scale, like a large scale translation platform that integrates with various content types and various platforms. Making the translation process easier, faster. Additionally, we specialize in various types of translations from human to machine translation. We integrate with various machine translation engines. And really, we just, our mission is to translate all the digital, content out there. So thank you for listening to this. Let's jump over to Dispatch real quick and do an intro there.
Yeah, so if you folks aren't familiar with Dispatch, we're a platform that helps teams streamline and centralize their email creation process. We basically provide an environment where you can quickly build on-brand responsive emails that work on any email service provider. I mean, any. So if you're using multiple ones, like you'd use Dispatch to manage all of your emails. And then Ashley said, we're here today to talk about our brand new Smartling integration. If you're localizing emails manually today, I think this is really going to help you. And then later, Ashley's going to show us how it actually works.
Great. Okay. Quick agenda. So basically, we're going to walk through these four items here. So we're going to talk about like the challenges and approaches to email translations today, and Dylan's going to walk us through some of most of that. And then we're going to spend some time covering the benefits and ROI of email localization and why you should translate and why it's important to. And then we're going to look at the essentials for translating an effective campaign and getting the translation localization done for that. At the very end, Ashley's going to walk us through the demonstration of showing the integration and the nice tight coupling between the systems, and you'll see some cool like things like visual context and things are hooked up. So excited to kind of move forward into that. So let's move into the first step here and talk about the challenges and approaches. And I think, Dylan, you are going to, kind of open this up for us here.
Yeah. So I'll talk about the challenges involved with basically email in general and localizing emails especially. We find there's many different challenges, but three main ones I want to talk about today are like insufficient software. So it's likely that your email provider right now, if they support localizing your emails, it's an afterthought. This has been our experience, and we've integrated with a ton of different email service providers. They usually require you to kind of use like their weird system where they're making you write these complex templates, or there's lots of duplication involved where you're using multiple emails for the same thing. Or you have to find your own thing, and this requires engineering resources where you're building something on top of it, and now you have to maintain that thing, and now you have some vendor lock-in. If you ever needed to move email service providers, you suddenly need to change your integration. So that one's pretty hard to get around. Companies do it, of course. The next one, and I mean, this is why we're here today and talking with Smartling, is providing like an actual localized experience. So obviously, localizing is more than just translating some text. You need to provide some sort of nuance for the users you're sending emails to. I'm Canadian, and I expect my distance to be in kilometers and my temperature units to be in Celsius, and that might not be the case for everyone that you're sending emails to. So that's something you need to think about as you're sending out like these emails to different countries or your different customers. You might have different, like if you're a large multinational company or you're looking to expand, you might have different legal requirements too. So your legalese or the footer that you're showing might have to be vastly different depending on, where in the EU you're sending an email versus, to someone in the US. So these are like things you really need to think about. And then how do you manage that sort of complexity on top of like your emails while you're trying to, get useful information back, like, what's the engagement rate? Then when you start doing things like throwing in RTL languages, so right to left, like Hebrew or Arabic, it suddenly gets even more complicated because your text flow changes. I mean, I'm sure, Stephen, you're pretty familiar with this. And,
Familiar with all the templates too, and all the problems with templates. We've worked with a lot of different email platforms, and they have very similar, hard challenges to work around too.
Yeah. I know like more modern HTML makes this a little easier, where you're just throwing like a direction attribute or something in a tag, and suddenly your website, it's RTL. But like email stuck in the past. So it's like writing HTML for like in like 2005 or something. It's
right.
It's all tables. Yeah. If you're sending a receipt, for example, you suddenly need to reverse the columns if you're sending it in like Arabic or Hebrew or something. These are like a further level of complexity on top of this email. Then this brings us to like quality assurance. So if you're part of a marketing team right now, I'm sure like you're used to the sort of workflow where you're building an email, maybe that's going to an agency, or you're sending it to an email developer or something, or you have some tool to like build this thing. Then you're testing it. You're making sure it works with different dynamic, content, like merge variables, make sure those render correctly. Yeah. So, but now if you're controlling this with like a language too, you need to make sure that this works in every language, that your text renders properly in every language. Like a small or short English sentence might become 3 long German words, which then breaks the design of your email. It's
very common.
Yeah. So if you aren't building your emails in like a responsive way, or you aren't taking this into account, you don't have a way to see it. It's very hard to test this, and you're wasting time just in QA rather than like actually providing value to your customers.
Right. Yeah. It causes a lot more iterations to get it fixed, right? And to get it ready, right? So you're gonna try to get translations done. Then someone's gonna go look at it and be like, oh, we can't send this out, and now we're gonna have to like go back and try to fix all of those things. And sometimes you can fix them earlier upstream if you have a little bit better tooling and stuff like that, then dodge some of those issues. But I think that's what we can talk about a little bit today.
Totally. And before we jump, I did want to mention one other thing in regards to challenges that I see frequently, like in the past, from the product perspective, with all the manual challenges that come, or with all the challenges that come with like a manual approach, it can be really difficult to get internal stakeholder buy-in for investing time and resources into localizing your email campaigns. I've had to pitch to previous like marketing teams or leadership boards about the value of localizations and why it's important, why we should do it. But that time cost associated with a manual workflow is just such a huge barrier that some companies can't get over, which resulted in localizations just being on the back burner forever. So I think even workflow aside, that manual flow really affects the total user experience because, just that time sink is so huge.
They just won't even participate in it, right? They just put it off. They just say, well, translation's not really worth it at this point if it's so manual and complex to accomplish.
Yeah.
So that becomes not really a priority until it has to be done,
Yeah, which is unfortunate because it adds such value to the end user.
Yeah, agreed. Great. Thanks for that, Ashley. Any last words from you, Dylan, on that?
Actually, I think this segues pretty well into what have we seen customers actually do. So like Ashley's saying, it's hard to get started. And what we've seen from our side, like helping users like localize their emails. Stephen, I'm sure you've seen a bunch of just wild out there things on your side before people adopt Smartling. But on the email side, generally what we see are like people come to us because they've connected a couple of APIs together, and that's pretty good. It's automated for the most part. There's still some problems there because the email, like it's a marketing messaging usually, or it's a product messaging, and this is a collaborative effort. Like, but engineering needs to own now this system that connects these APIs together. It's can be hard to like actually update something. Might take engineering resources. Then we've seen people do things. I think you mentioned this earlier, Stephen, just complex templates. So there's just like, a ton of conditionals or something. If customer is, French, show the French version. Something like that still requires engineering resources, still requires like someone to go and update, some copy because like this template lives somewhere in source code or often engineering land somewhere. So you don't, you have to go through this big, long process to get something out to actually test it. And then, God forbid you're using spreadsheets and email to manage this. If you are, just go by Smartling.
That's probably more common than the API, right?
Yes. People who use an API today, like connect APIs, like they come to us and because they want something better. But when we see people using spreadsheets, it's like, oh no, poor person, we're gonna make your life so much better. We had one customer that it took them like weeks to update copy in an email, like a simple email. And then they had like this receipt template basically. And if they needed to update that, it was a quarter-long project because of all the moving parts. They had like 100+ locales or something. It wasn't in some sort of system or process. They just shared a spreadsheet around where they put in fake templating code and then gave it to engineers or actually I think it was services they were using. And it's like, okay, now just implement this from our spreadsheets. Took a huge long time.
Yeah.
Those
are more fun. We've seen those too.
Yeah. So if you're doing that today, just please buy Smartling. Yeah, I think like we really want in a solution is something that'll give you the full context of an email. So your designers, developers, copy editors, localizers, engineers, whoever's working and in charge of this can actually see the email and test and iterate on it, which brings us to this.
Yeah, good segue, I think, as well. Obviously, you have all your users inside of your system that need to be able to see it, and they could just open it up and preview it, and they're used to that. Or you can send them a link to share it. But I think it's also important from the translator's perspective and our linguist perspective to have the actual visual context of the email too. Because if you think about when you're passing over, something for translation, it's typically not the actual like HTML or a full rendered view of the HTML. It's usually just like a resource file that has strings and being passed over, and we kind of have like string by string segment view for the linguist. But we also have an integrated visual context, which you can see we have a GIF going here. It's basically passing along a real preview of the email from dispatch and rendering it inside of our CAT tool so that our linguists can see as they're translating. They'll be able to see, the rendered translations previewed there, and so they can get a good idea of things like that. But this is a very big problem, I think, in today's old school like manual approach is you don't really have this visual context easily available for your linguists. This is a very complex thing to accomplish if you even want to try to accomplish it. On top of all of your other, templates and things and APIs and things you're talking about, this is just another thing that would be hard to try to accomplish manually. So I'm excited to take a look at this. Ashley will have this in her demo, so we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, I'm curious, Stephen, do you find like this saves translators time?
It saves overall a lot of time for translators, but also for the end, the end audience, because, the end reviewer. So if a company has like an internal subject matter expert that's going to review all the translations before they actually publish anything, they're likely going to be coming across issues that they have to go and work with our linguists again to resolve before they do the publishing. It's usually just kind of like a handful of back and forth. And what you'll see is those issues drop down when the users, our linguists, have a visual context. They can translate better. They understand the content better. We also use other assets like glossaries and terminology lists and translation memory and things to try to aid and make their quality better. But visual context is so important to really bring their level of quality up and really turn down the amount of issues you would see in the translation like quality review. So yeah, good question.
Yeah, that's funny. We find the same thing with just email building in general too. When you're trying to test, how merge tags are going to work. So from like an engineering or targeting sort of perspective, where you're trying to see what each customer will see, totally makes sense that this helps out too.
Yeah, totally. All right, let's go to the next slide here. We're going to take a look now at the benefits and the ROI of email localization. And I think in general, we'll talk about email localization, but I think some of our statistics are just translation in general. Like, why does localization in general helpful? And I'll kind of kick us off here. So some of big statistics here are not the majority of the internet is not native English speakers. So, it's only 26% of the internet speaks English natively. So I think along with that, users they prefer that content be in their own language. This allows them to actually want to buy more frequently if it's in their own language as well. So what we see is we need to be able to produce content in these users' native tongue so that they can be more willing to buy and participate in what we're offering. So I think the big thing here is just you're going to reach your users better. You're going to have better return from them if you're able to speak in their language and basically share information with them the way they understand it better. So any comments here from you on that, Dylan?
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about it is more around. So yeah, obviously, like not a lot of people, not everyone using the internet speaks English, but there's a big market of people out there, and depending on like what your product is or what your company does, like that's another market you can tackle, and it is hard to do that unless you have an in-house translation team or you're using a service like Smartling to actually message these people.
Right. Yep. Great. Let's talk about email ROI specifically. So I think this one's. Let's have Dylan share his thoughts on this one.
Yeah. I mean, I hope some of the people here listening to the webinar today are, marketers. They're probably pretty familiar with this. It's part of justifying the job and our jobs at Dispatch. But there's a lot of, email still growing. I know it's ancient by tech standards. It's been around like the 70s or something. It's been around a long time, but it's still growing. As more people come online, more people need an inbox for whatever reason. It's yet another touch point with your customers, and one that's really engaging. Our friends at Litmus, they're like an email testing company. They found that emails had an average ROI of 36,000%. So every dollar you spent, you got $36 back in return based on email marketing. Still a really valuable resource. And localizing just means like, you're reaching bigger, larger markets. And then I think like something to think about when localizing in general too, this goes back to what Ashley was saying, where it's hard to get buy-in. Like another way to improve your ROI is to reduce your cost. So if you're spending lots of money right now localizing emails, not using service like Smartling or Dispatch, whatever, you're doing this manually. Hope you're not using spreadsheets. You can save money by adopting, some sort of automated system. I think we have a quote here from one of our customers, Grover. They're like a European electronics company or electronics rental company. You should check them out. After adopting our services, they didn't need to get engineering resources to actually update and change their messaging and start delivering, more value to their customers or testing messaging rather than creating, Jira tickets or whatever.
Yeah, so that makes sense. I think it kind of goes hand in hand. I think you have so many users. You get so much return from email naturally. It's a good revenue source, right? It's a good thing to go after. And I think as you start to scale up the amount of people you're sending those to, you're going to get more revenue. But if you can drive the amount of effort it takes down to get those emails out so that you have more return, and then you can actually make it faster so you can get more emails out faster as well. I think you just have so many things kind of coming together there by making the translation operation automatic and fast, right? Easy for the users. So interesting.
Yeah, it's a what is that, virtuous circle?
Sounds like
yeah. Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's jump to the next section here. And we're just going to talk basically about an effective email, localization campaign. What does this look like? And we'll have Dylan go ahead and kick us off here on the essentials slide. I'd like him to kind of give us an intro, what he thinks like the right effective way to do this would be.
Yeah. So I think in the challenges bit, I mentioned some of this, and some of that's like, if you're adopting RTL language, making sure your text flow is controlled. But some of the simple stuff, just like making sure that your images are different, or that the alt text on your images are different. If you're not familiar, like alt text tells a screen reader basically like what is this image of, or if you're not showing images, it'll display a bit of text. Like that's the alt text. Then there are some invisible things like ensuring that the document, like the email says it's, it needs to be read in French rather than in English. A lot of people mess this one up where someone who's visually impaired and needs a screen reader will use it on their email and it will start speaking French in an English accent and it just sounds completely wrong. So those are little things you need to keep in mind. But like for the broad strokes, you need to make sure your images are updated, that your text, of course, obviously is translated, that you're providing that level of nuance per locale. So I see Celsius and Steven sees Fahrenheit. Then you got to make sure like you have a workflow that can quickly and easily extract these bits of content that can separate the text and the images from the layout, which is like where the image goes or where the text goes. Because you don't care about that. You want that generally in the same place.
Right.
But you need an efficient way to extract that content, and that's really hard to do manually if you're not using a system that can handle HTML or handle these nuances of email HTML in particular.
Especially when you have stuff like variables and placeholders and things inside of there that you have to protect as well. Like when you're parsing, like if the translation, if those are missing, you're going to have a broken title or a broken subject name or something like that doesn't work properly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You don't want translators translating like the first name variable to nom or something, right? Like, that'll just break. Same with like even more complicated like templating stuff. So if you're showing different content based on like the type of customer you're displaying this to, you got to make sure that content's translated as well, and that you can test that and that you can see what it looks like. Basically efficiencies. You want something where you can build an email or build whatever. In this case, we're talking about email. Build an email and then basically localize and translate and get it to a state where you can send to your customers as fast as you can translate it.
Right. Yeah. And so to me, what that looks like is one, being able to have a tool like that's integrated. So you have your users from within inside of Dispatch. In this case, they can check out an email. They'll be able to go and finish creating it, publish it. They'll have options to check translation status and essentially kick off translations. There's no export, there's no copy and pasting, there's no spreadsheets. They simply have a button they push now, sends it off, it checks it into a Smartling job where it actually can apply different various types of workflows. Like if you need automatic, quick, fast translations, like machine translations, we do stuff like that. But for this content, email marketing content is really more high quality. So you're going to want to be looking at human translations. So we have the ability to kind of apply the correct workflow to the right content. And then we have all of the really kind of important translation features that you're going to need to make the translation operations more efficient. And then produce a higher quality and to drive your costs down. We have things such as translation memory where we reuse the translations that you've approved in the past. So you don't have to, continually retranslate the same sentences over and over, driving the costs up and up. So we have great technology for reusing translations. We have, things to really control like quality, like to rate quality and to gauge quality. We have issue management and tracking, so you can have collaboration between various teams so they can kind of get the translations in the right state before they ever really go back out to dispatch. And really it's hands off from the dispatch user. All they did was select a button, they send it off, and then the translation team, operations team, whoever's working on that, Smartling will prepare that and get it translated without them really having to interact or do much, right? They just come back, they check for it, they check the status, and now, oh, look, we have translated emails, available for us. I think it's really just got to be such an easy user experience for the the email marketing user, right? So I think Ashley's going to show us exactly what that looks like today. So
yeah, before we move on to that, I mean, I'm this is one of the reasons why I'm so excited for our Smartling integration here. Our old way of translating is we would give like a file full of strings. This is what you were talking about, Stephen, where you don't have context. So happy we integrated with visual context with Smartling. We get to show that off. But we had a really good question in chat that I kind of missed that I want to answer now. Somebody asked, how do you solve the problem of not being able to localize URLs? Do you have to change them manually in your application? So the answer to that is like yes and no. Like I guess when you're translating, we have Smartling has a translation memory, so you'd use that to make that fast and automatic. But one of the things that Dispatch does is we take out the URLs so they're localizable by default. So you can translate them. This is one of the weird things in email, where you're mixing like HTML and text content. So yeah, we support being able to localize URLs. So you send your customer to the right place. That's a great question. And I think with that, Ashley's going to show us a demo of how this works.
Yeah, I think that's our next section here. So I'll stop sharing. You ready, Ashley?
All right. Sure am.
Okay. There we go.
I'm going to share my second monitor here. So you're going to see me like look off into the distance.
No worries.
Screen 2. All right. Dylan or Steven, can you see Dispatch and Smartling?
I can.
Yeah,
Excellent.
side by side. Looks good.
All right. Thank you. So I'm going to be flipping back and forth between the two, just so we can see what's happening in Dispatch, what's happening in Smartling as this whole sync is occurring. I have a basic template in Dispatch that I created. I've already previously localized it in Smartling, but I want to add another locale because we've decided to expand our services and we need to support more locales for those new countries. So in Dispatch, I'm going to add a new locale. And we'll do Danish from Denmark. Create that. And I don't need to do anything else here. It will just be a locale with my default language strings in here. But I'm going to click Sync to Smartling. And here I have the option to name the job. By default, it's just the name of your Dispatch template. But because I've already localized this template once, I'm going to add a bit more context there so I know what has changed. So added DA TK locale. I'm going to confirm and sync. All right. And now Smartling has created a job and I have to authorize this job. My account is set up, so I have to authorize each new job so I can make sure I'm happy with what I'm paying for that job. You can, in Smartling, set it up so that it auto-authorizes for you, and Dispatch would recognize that. And we'll show you in a moment what that looks like. So
yeah,
I have my, sorry?
Just basically the authorization just allows you to have a control step. Some teams want to have it a control step where they can do proper quoting and basically apply the right workflow, make sure they have everything in order, and then authorize it and let it go. Whereas in some cases, they don't want to have that step. They want to have automatic quoting and just have everything flow. They don't want a control step of authorization. So we can turn that on or off.
Yeah, and Dispatch will respect whichever workflow is set up in Smartling. So we just talk to Smartling and get that sorted. Okay, so I have my job here. And I'm going to authorize this. And we'll see it's moved to in progress.
Yeah, you can.
There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to refresh Dispatch. Now, normally in Dispatch, our users, they would go away and go work on other email templates while this template's being localized to Smartling. So you wouldn't have to like refresh your page and like watch. But if you were to come in and check up on your status in Dispatch, you can see your job status progress from your Smartling job directly in Dispatch. So if you aren't on like the localization's subject matter side of your organization, but you're just curious as if the template's ready for you or not, you can see the job status is in progress and how complete it is. because I've previously localized this template in Smartling, their translation memory is kicked in. So it's already 75% complete for me, which is amazing. So I'm going to come into Smartling, and I'm going to use the cat tool to do machine translations for the purposes of this demo. We would generally encourage our clients to use like Smartling's professional services if they don't have in-house localization teams. So I will open the cat tool, unlock all that, and open visual context. So now I can see the exact same template I have in Dispatch. I can see that visual context in Smartling. So I will use the machine translation suggestions here and localize this email. This is our subject line. And these fields at the bottom won't highlight, but we're actually localizing attributes on the image here. So this is the alt tag, and this is the image URL. So if I wanted to show a completely different image for the Danish locale, I can replace that URL here. I'm going to use the same image for the purposes of the demo, so I'm just going to autofill that. And then this is our button URL. So again, we can change that URL on buttons and images, whichever links that can be taken to a particular locale page. But again, I'm just going to do the same one for the demo here.
Look at that instruction there too. So it even tells you, the context of this link.
Yeah, this is really helpful when you have lots of different images or buttons going on. You know exactly which button you're editing. I found that most helpful for testing. And it looks like I have a typo. So I'm sorry to any Danish speakers. I'm just going to do that. I'm sure that's not the correct word, but I just want the typo to dismiss. So I'm going to submit all the translated strings and go back to my dashboard. And we'll just click in here. Okay, so now we see that the job is completed. And so I'm going to come back into Dispatch and again, refresh my page. And now we'll see that that job is 100% complete again. And I now have my new Danish locale directly in Smartling. So really on the Dispatch side, all I had to do was add my locales that I cared about, sync to Smartling. Smartling handles the rest. Once it's done in Smartling, Dispatch automatically pulls all the translated content for you and unlocks your template. So now you're ready to go publish that template, get it scheduled in your email campaign, and start sending.
Maybe a question for you, Ashley, since we have a few minutes here. What does it look like to do like a new version of an email? What if you want to start over again? Kind of like a new, like what does your experience look like if you want to start, like you want to make some updates to this, this email or use it for a new campaign? What does that look like for this?
Yeah, so in Dispatch, we have version histories in a way. So you could create a new draft, a brand new draft, which would start you from scratch, or you could duplicate this draft. So if we duplicate it, we'll just call it second draft. And I can come into here, and I'm going to have all the same content, including the same localizations, which I can clear out if I wanted to.
Okay. And you would essentially
but then I can change all the content in here. A new headline. And then at this point, I could sync this draft with Smartling.
Mm-hmm.
And it would create a brand new job that was separate. So your current one, if you didn't close it, your current one would always just sit in the completed status. So if you were to add new locales to that first draft, it would continue the job again, like kind of restart it. But the second draft would create a new job. So it's separate.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't fight each other.
Yeah.
So you kind of maintain that version history in both Dispatch and Smartling.
Yep. And I think the great thing is even if you just made a few tweaks, a new headline like this, and you sent it to Smartling, we're going to use, translation memory matching and things like that to basically require it, like only do the linguists only have to translate the delta, the new stuff or the change stuff, right? They're not like going back and retranslating everything always from scratch. So that's very helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And in like this case, if it's just the headline, then maybe we sync to Smartling and it'll say like 99% complete, because it's just that one string that we now have to localize.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's important to note, like if in Smartling, we can also set up like a multi-stage workflow here. So let's say you want to have your one user be able to initiate the translation and send it off and kick it off to translations, but then you have an in-house person that you'd like to have participate in the review process of all the translations. We can add them in a step at the end of the workflow, and they can have access to Smartling and get assignments, basically, where they can get assigned to review certain emails that are coming through the process. And they'll just automatic notifications. They can go in and open this up really fast, review all the translations that we're performing, and give their kind of like final stamp on it, and then, still send it back. So our systems integrate well from an operational standpoint too, where they can kind of, be used by multiple teams. So that's interesting. Let's see. I think that was it for most of our presentation. I think we can now move into, some questions if we'd like from here. Let's see if we have any unanswered ones here.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I think we have some good ones.
Okay. Do we have a list of ESPs that Smartling can integrate with? So on our website, we do have a list of integrations that we've developed that are basically our own developed solutions with other email providers. So you'll see some of those. I'm not going to announce all of those on this call. We're here highlighting Dispatch, and so we want to really bring their attention to them. But you can check all of those out on our website. Let's see, next one here. Did you see one?
There's one up on the screen, actually.
Oh,
this is one for you, Stephen.
Yes, let me read it here. The translation process, does this work on a word-for-word translation, or does the tool consider niche, localized, paraphrasing, ways of talking about particular topics? So you have different types of translation. We don't translate on a word by word. Typically, we translate on what we call like a string, and a string is usually a set of words, and sometimes it's one word. If it's like let's say you're looking at a Word doc and it has a bunch of bullets in there, and each bullet, maybe some of the bullets are one word bullets, and maybe they're like 5-word bullets. Each one of those bullets basically is a string. We kind of consider it separate. But we can also, but when the linguists translate, they don't just translate, one by word. They kind of translate contextually. They want to take everything into context and provide the right translation. So I don't know that I fully understand the second part. Or does the tool consider niche, localized paraphrasing ways?
How do you handle idioms?
So those are also part of the process of understanding getting our linguists tied in closely with our customer and their understanding of their content and what their needs are. We have things such as style guides that are used to communicate niche and paraphrasing and terminology lists, various things like that, or how do they want to handle certain translations for popular words or marketing phrases that are used all the time. So how do they want those translations to come across, or do they not want them to be translated? So there's a lot of work that goes into preparing our linguists to understand your content better. And there's various assets, linguistic assets is what we call them, to prepare. And that helps us basically account for those types of things. All right. Next question. How does the translation work if you are working with dynamic content?
Yeah, great. That's a really good question. So I know on the dispatch side, we take account of this. So if you're using like conditional content, we'll send both conditions to Smartling, and we won't send the very like the templating code. So that's taken away from the Smartling bit, and you'll still be able to see it in the visual context. And I know on the Smartling side, you folks handle variables, so translators know not to translate them, right?
Yeah, they can't.
Yeah.
Translate them.
Yeah. So,
and we would get all iterations of whatever they've, however they've changed each iteration of the text. We would, translate all versions of that and provide that back, so you could have different versions you want.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh,
Do you offer various Spanish dialects to choose from? Yes, absolutely. So we don't just there's various versions of Spanish. We offer different locales of Spanish. This is also true for other languages. So we would offer various French languages. There's all kinds of different languages that have different locales. So Spanish isn't the only one. But yes, we can do various versions. Okay, I see that the link for the image is an internal dispatch link. If all images do get such a link, how do we change the image with another one? Do we need to upload it into dispatch somehow first?
yeah, that's a really good question. So I think when Ashley showed off the demo, there's a way to put in a different URL to a different image. So you can control it from there at the Smartling translation side. There's also a way to do this in Dispatch directly too. We do support image hosting where we'll host your images for you. You can upload them into Dispatch, but it's not required. That can be any URL. So if you're hosting images yourself somewhere on some CDN, you can continue to use that. And then you're just swapping it out for a different URL. Ashley, am I missing anything?
Nope, that's correct. We offer both options.
Great. Very good. All right, next question here. But you need to change URLs when you go back to dispatch, right? Question mark. For example, for a CTA that leads you to a localized version of a page, because you cannot add a localized URL on Smartling, I do not know if I'm making myself clear on this. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. So to explain that flow, so when we send stuff to Smartling or our localization system in general, it extracts things like a URL for a button or a link. And we'll send that to Smartling. So you can change it there if you needed to. And if you change it there and send it back, we'll update it for that locale. You could also change it directly on the dispatch side. So for for every locale, you could go in there and manually set it. And there's also ways that we can help with this too. If you're doing like some sort of templating or something like that, you can build that into the email. So, if email is Spanish, include the Spanish link or something. You can lock that down from getting translated if you prefer a more programmatic approach.
Great. Hopefully that was helpful.
We have options.
Yeah. Okay, I think that may be all of our questions. Any last comments from you guys, Dylan, Ashley?
Yeah, I think there was a chat message, and I'm trying to find it in here that I wanted to call out. Yeah, in the beginning, they were not joking about spreadsheet plague in the DIY localizations. No, we were not. This is a very real thing. If you're doing this, I don't care if you're sending email, just buy something like buy Smartling. Just buy Smartling. Save you so much time. I think, yeah, I guess if you're looking into localizing today or you're doing that right now, you need to think about how quickly can you add a new locale, add a new language to serve new customers. Are you set up to suddenly take on 5 or more regions? Can you quickly check, what the legalese looks like to make sure that, you're compliant in each region you're sending email to? You should start thinking about adopting an automated solution if you can't address that sort of thing quickly.
Right. Yep. Well, we're super excited to partner with Dispatch. It's been we've been partnered already for a little while now. It's nice to see that we've been able to bring this this integration to the market. So big kudos to them and their team for developing this and engineering it. Good kudos to Ashley for the demo today, and thank you for sharing that. Dylan, it was great to pick your mind and get all your thoughts on email marketing localization. I think we learned a lot of great and important information from you today. It's exciting to see a lot of questions coming through on the webinar. It's very engaging questions, and we're excited to get some people to try this out and give us some good feedback so we can work together to help solve your email localization issues. So thank you, Ashley and Dylan, for joining us today. We appreciate it. There was time well spent. Do you guys have any final words you want to say?
Me first, Ashley. Thanks for joining, everyone. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Smartling, for hosting this. This was great.
Ditto. And just want to say, I'm stoked that we have a direct integration. It's been a joy to work with Smartling, building the integration. Our customers are already loving it and asking for additional features, and we're getting those in as quickly as we can. So stoked to continue the partnership. Thanks so much,
Very
Stephen.
good. Yeah, thank you guys. You guys have a great day. Thank you all for joining us, and everybody
everyone.
have a good afternoon and have a great night.